Then, suddenly, I was jerked out of my thoughts by the most unlikely thing imaginable. A voice beside me, a man's voice asking, in a calm, polite tone, Miss Linton, will you do me the honor of dancing with me? Practicing impertinence. My eyes flew open, and I looked up to see an upright, elderly military gentleman with an enormous moustache standing before me. Not Mr. Ambrose, definitely not. It was Colonel Remington, one of the many captains and colonels Sir Philip had introduced me to. And why the heck had I been thinking of Mr. Ambrose? He wasn't even here. The colonel cleared his throat. Maybe he thought I hadn't heard him. Will you do me the honor of dancing with me, Miss Linton? He repeated. No, I said. He turned a bit red in the face, and went away, looking rather affronted. Perhaps that had not quite been according to etiquette. I racked my brains, trying to remember my aunt's lessons. Hadn't there been something about a lady never being allowed to refuse a dance unless she had already promised it to another gentleman? Well, if there was such a rule, it was complete bollocks. 20. I should have the right to choose not to dance with whomever I bloody well pleased. Through a gap in the potted plants I could see Colonel Remington joining a few of his military friends, mostly younger officers. He was gesticulating quite energetically. No doubt he was conveying something he considered to be of some importance. One of the young men laughed. Maybe she just didn't like the looks of you, he teased the elder gentleman. My mouth dropped open. They were talking about me. Me. Well, at least that would ensure that I wouldn't be bothered with any more invitations to dance this night. My lapse in courtesy would spread across the room like wildfire, and surely all those chauvinists would be revolted and shocked to the core. None of the men would even bother to give me a second glance after that. I must have a look at that wench, the young officer continued with a wink, and my mouth dropped open a little farther. Was she pretty? I couldn't hear the colonel's more muted reply to this, but the young officer laughed again. Come on, old boy, she must have been. And known it, too, quite a conceited little madam, to turn down an officer like that. He winked at the other young men around him and strode off. I could hardly believe that he was going to do what I thought he was going to do. Nevertheless, when the dance had ended and the next one was approaching, I saw him striding towards me with a gait so pompous you could have identified him as a young military officer even if he had been missing his uniform, medals and underpants. He was accompanied by one of his friends who had already been introduced to me. Both of them examined me not unlike one would examine a piece of meat on a butcher's counter. I ignored them with magnificent composure and took another piece of solid chocolate from the plate beside me. Miss Linton, Mr. Familiar Soldier made an extravagant bow, and Mr. Unfamiliar Soldier followed suit. I don't know whether you remember me. I'm Major Rushworth. Sir Philip introduced us. I did not deign to reply immediately. After all, it was considered impolite to talk with your mouth full, wasn't it? Instead, I finished my chocolate, and then plastered a smile on my face. Sir Philip introduced me to a great many people, I replied sweetly. Most of whom my unreliable memory has already unintroduced again. You, I'm afraid, are among them. It was half true. I had actually forgotten him. Nevertheless, my memory was usually very good, yet only for things I wanted to remember. Major Rushworth blushed slightly but didn't let that deter him. Well, may I be permitted to introduce you to a friend of mine? To this gentleman, here, Lieutenant Ellingham. My eyes narrowed. I didn't know much about etiquette, but I did know that the inferior person was always introduced to the superior. By deciding to introduce me to his friend and not the other way around, he had put me on a level below him. And that was something, considering the complacent smile on the lieutenant's face, which I did not appreciate at all. No, you may not, I told him, but you may introduce him to me, if you like. Apparently, at first the major didn't quite know what to say to that. He gazed at me for a moment, then collected himself again, cleared his throat and went on. Very well, Miss Linton, may I be allowed to introduce my friend Lieutenant Ellingham to your notice? Yes, you may. The smile on my face was widened a bit and I nodded graciously. Delighted to make your acquaintance, Lieutenant Ellingham, I lied. As am I, said the young man, whose arrogant smile had not in the least been reduced in radiance by my rebuff. Well, I'll leave you to it then, the major said, throwing me another odd glance and then disappearing with an eye roll at his friend. I saw the message, it's your funeral, clearly in those eyes. And he was right, it was. Lieutenant Ellingham seated himself beside me. Taking the bull by the horns, I turned to him. Best to get this over with. Well, what should we talk about, Lieutenant? The weather would be a good subject of discussion, if we were not inside and it was night. How about the society? He asked, gesturing towards the people dancing everywhere in the grand room. That would be unwise. When you make conversation, it is generally considered best to say nice and polite things. And the present society would not furnish me with a lot of opportunities for that. He blinked at me, no doubt wondering if he had heard right. In the end, he seemed to decide that he had not. I was a lady, after all. Ladies didn't say impolite things. It was unheard of. Instead of trying to find another topic, he cut right to the chase. I must admit, Miss Linton, that I had a particular reason for wishing an introduction with you. Did you? Now, I couldn't entirely keep the sarcasm out of my voice. But the young man's arrogance apparently made him immune to sarcasm from ladies as well as to impudence. He gave me a smile that he probably thought was charming. It wasn't. Yes, I did. I have been admiring you from afar for some time now. You have caught my eye, Miss Linton. Indeed, I raised an eyebrow. I can't remember you throwing it at me, to be honest. I don't have your eye on me, I promise. I never catch eyes. They're rather slippery and slimy things, not at all the kind of objects I would like to carry around in my pocket. He blinked, just as dumbfounded as his friend before, clearly lacking the brains to decipher my reply. For some unknown reason, I took pity on him. Were you going to ask me if I would dance with you? I asked him. Yes, that is it, exactly. How did you know? Let's just say I am a discerning person. Well, if it is a dance you want, that makes things very simple. Excellent. He got up, his arrogant grin back on his face, and held a hand out to me. No, I said, not looking up at him. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a look of confusion cross his face. Excuse me. You want to dance with me? I have just given you my answer. No, oh. Yes, why don't you try that young lady over there? She looks to be in want of a partner, and unlike me, she actually wants one. Goodbye. He stood rooted to the spot for a few more seconds, then let his hand drop and walked off. Picking another piece of chocolate off the plate, I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. For some reason, he didn't appear very disheartened. If I had to choose a word to describe his facial expression, I think I would have chosen intrigued, though I didn't see how the bloody hell that could be. Through the potted plants, I saw him return to his friends, and they hooted and slapped him on the back while he grinned shamefaced. I was very pleased with myself. Now, finally, there would be an end of the matter. No more invitations to dance tonight. A few minutes later a cough distracted me, and I looked up only to be confronted with another officer asking me to dance. I turned him down like a bedspread. And the one after that. And the one after the one after that. And the other gentlemen who followed, from captains to colonels, from misters to majors. It was amazing. The more of them I sent packing, the more seemed to pop up everywhere. You'd think that by now they would have gotten the message. During a break in the assault of dance-addicted gentlemen, I took another peek through the foliage. Ella was again being whisked across the floor in the arms of Sir Philip Wilkins and looked about ready to faint from the attention. I grinned. It would do her good to be out in society. Maybe she would get a little more confidence and experience. But as I let my eyes wander farther over the assembled guests, I noticed something strange. I couldn't see my aunt anywhere. That was very curious indeed. Ella, Maria and Anne were busy hunting for prospective husbands. Lisbeth was doing her best, and even Gertrude was dancing with a quiet, elderly gentleman. My aunt would hardly leave the dance floor at such a moment, unless it would be too. And then the voice of doom spoke behind me. Lily, what in the name of the Lord is this I have been hearing, about you refusing to dance? Oh blast. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. My aunt emerged from behind a potted plant like a vulture from behind a lone desert rock and stalked towards me. I could almost see the sword of just punishment in her right and the scales in her left hand. Hello, aunt, I said. This is a nice evening. Wonderful ball, don't you think? But apparently, my aunt did not want to change the subject right now. I heard from Colonel Remington that you refused to dance with him. Only from him. Yes, wait, what do you mean, only from him? Do you mean to say there are others with whom you refuse to dance? I could have slapped myself for not keeping my big mouth shut. I wasn't usually timid, but in the face of the huge fire-breathing dragon that was my aunt, I cowered on my chair, my eyes downcast. Maybe. Either you did or you didn't. Well. Did. How many? 2, 3. More something like 13, maybe 14. Watching my aunt's expression, I truly believe that had we been at home, my eardrums would have been in some danger of being shattered by her reaction. However, at this very moment a gentleman stepped up to the refreshment tables and took a piece of chocolate off the plates, reminding my aunt that we were in company and that ladies did not scream like furies when they were in company. Slowly, she stepped towards me until only inches separated us and bent down towards my ear. If you should be so lucky as to have another deluded gentleman apply for your hand, she hissed into my ear, you will accept it or I will lock you in your room and throw the key away, understood? I paled. My aunt, misinterpreting my look, nodded satisfied. That's it. No lounging about in the park or in the garden, no going to the library, and above all no meeting with those friends of yours. All I could manage in answer was a shaky nod. My aunt didn't know the real force of her threat. I had obligations now. I couldn't simply be locked in my room like a spoiled child. If I wasn't punctually at work tomorrow, Mr. Ambrose would dismiss me for sure. For a fleeting moment the idea of leaving home entered my mind, but no. I wasn't even of age yet. My aunt could bring me back and forcibly lock me in my room if she wished. Though if she heard I had left her house to work for a living, she would probably lock me in an insane asylum instead. I swallowed hard. There was nothing for it. I had to dance. Dance with a man. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. 6 or 7 minutes later, a young officer approached me and bowed. Colonel Malcolm. I remembered him from Sir Philip's flood of introductions. Somewhere behind him I could see a few others, among them Lieutenant Ellingham, laughing quietly. Miss Linton, may I have the honor of the next dance? The officer braced himself for the rebuff. Yes. He stared at me, evidently taken aback. Really? I pulled a face. Yes, really. I said yes, didn't I? Yes, you did. It's just. I rolled my eyes at him. Let's just get this over with, shall we? The music began to play. Getting to my feet, I grabbed the surprised officer by the hand and hauled him onto the dance floor, while his friends watched in awed amazement. Are you wearing good, solid boots? I asked. Boots. The young man looked at me with mounting confusion. Yes, miss. Why? Because I've never danced before in my life and I will probably step on your feet half the time. I don't want you permanently injured. He grinned a little boy grin. That's all right. I don't mind. I'm a cavalry officer, you know. Had a horse step on my foot 3 times already. You don't think you're heavier than a horse, do you? Suddenly realizing what he had said, he blushed. Begging your pardon, miss. I didn't mean to imply that. Well, unwillingly, I had to grin back. This might just not be such an ordeal after all. I replied, pretending to contemplate the question. No, I don't think I'm quite as heavy as a horse. But nearly. He smiled, relieved. Then I shall take care with every step I take. We danced. It didn't turn out to be that terrible. Colonel Malcolm was, for a man, relatively quiet and well behaved. He pointed me into the right direction without forcing me and didn't complain when I trampled on his toes. When we were done with the quadrille, he bowed to me in a very gentlemanly manner and said with a light smile that this had been a very novel experience. My next partners were not quite so agreeable. While my aunt watched from the shadows of the potted plants, I wrestled with various men who seemed to think dancing consisted of pushing around the female like a piece on a chessboard. Whenever they would get too overbearing, I would make good use of my heel and aim a solid kick at the gentleman's feet, or use my fan to prod them in the ribs. This elicited very satisfying groans from the male monsters. In that way, I got through about an hour of dancing. Sweat was beginning to trickle down my forehead. I threw a pleading glance at my aunt. She shook her head. So I smiled at the next gentleman and said yes, he could have the honor of this dance. The fight was beginning to go out of me. My kicks became increasingly feeble. After another half hour, I turned to my aunt again, this time clasping my hands in supplication. She considered a moment, then nodded. Thank the Lord, I was free. What bliss. Staggering to a chair near the refreshment tables, I flopped down on it and leaned back, closing my eyes. Whoever knew dancing could be so exhausting. If this was what you had to do in order to catch yourself an eligible bachelor, I wondered at the fact that not more ladies had decided to try and go find a job of their own. Compared with this, even working for Mr. Stoneface Ambrose looked like a piece of chocolate cake. Could I take off my shoes? My feet ached, and I wanted so much to give them a little room and air. But although this hadn't been included in any of my aunt's lectures about etiquette, I somehow believed that taking off your shoes and putting your feet on the next table wasn't considered acceptable behavior at a high society ball. My only consolation, I thought with a grin, was that I knew that my partner's feet would be hurting a dang sight more than mine right now. There was nothing so useful to a girl as really solid heels. Single quote ellipsis. And abominably rude, a voice made its way through the haze of my exhaustion to my brain. My eyelids fluttered open. The voice was coming from behind the nearest potted plant. I wasn't someone who eavesdropped, normally. Normally people didn't have anything interesting to say. But this sounded like one of those rare occasions where it might be interesting to keep an ear open. After all, they mentioned rudeness. They might be talking about me. Yes, that is what I heard. I heard another voice, which I recognized as Lady Metcalfe's. But he has certain redeeming features. Oh, not me. They were talking about some stupid man. Losing interest in the discussion, I slowly rose and started away in the direction of another refreshment table. I almost didn't catch the next sentence. But can any one of you tell me what is so fascinating about him? Another voice demanded. I just got back from the country and found that all London is awash with talk of him. I mean, what is so special about this Mr. Rickard Ambrose? I froze in my tracks. The sins of Mr. Rickard Ambrose. You haven't heard. The voice was full of glee and juicy gossip. I was so quickly at the potted plant behind which the group of gossiping ladies were hiding that I saw who had spoken. It was the Duchess of Brandon. I should have been able to guess from the tone. Lady Allen, obviously the one who had asked the question, flushed a little. From what I've heard since I've arrived in town, he's rumored to be one of the richest men in London, she said defensively. One of the richest. The Duchess laughed. The sound almost made me want to go away again, or at least stuff my ears while it lasted. My dear, from what my sources tell me, he is the richest. His wealth is unparalleled. There is only one other man who can hold a candle to him. Lady Allen's mouth formed a little, oh, and her eyes went wide. And I had to admit, to my shame, for once in my life I felt the same as Lady Allen and the Duchess of Brandon. I was awed, and a cold shiver ran down my back. The more I heard about Mr. Ambrose, the more rich and powerful he seemed to become. Where the hell did all this wealth come from? I couldn't believe he was simply the heir of some large estate. Why would he have that monumental building in the city if his wealth came from his inheritance? And what had all those people been doing there, hurrying about, carrying papers? The third member of the little discussion group behind the potted plant seemed to harbor similar questions. Yes, I knew that voice. Peeking through the foliage, I saw Lady Metcalfe wave her fan. But does anybody know where his wealth comes from? I must say, I have my suspicions that it's not honest money, and that he is no gentleman. I have repeatedly invited him to balls and the theatre, and never once has he accepted my invitation. He hasn't even replied. The nerve of him. I say there must be something fishy about him. There is no other way to explain such dastardly behavior. For some reasons those words made a grin appear on my face. Suddenly, I liked my employer a little bit better. Just a little bit. Well, the Duchess said in that drawn-out tone that said, I have a shocking piece of information and I am willing to share, but you must badger me first since I cannot very well appear to be a gossip. Yes, Lady Metcalfe leaned closer, eagerly. You know something, Duchess. Carefully, I stepped even closer to the potted plant, praying they would not notice me. The Duchess was a treasure trove of gossip, and for once I was actually interested in what she had to say. Very much so. I really can't, she protested. It is only a rumor, and I would never want to slander anybody. Amazing how people could lie without their face twitching. We won't tell, Lady Metcalfe assured her. Yes, Lady Allen concurred. You know us, we don't gossip. Really, really amazing. Well, all right, if you promise not to repeat anything I say. We promise, Lady Metcalfe nodded eagerly. It is only a rumor, mind you, and I do not have any proof. The Duchess gloried in the eager anticipation of her friends. Does he have anything to do with the Ambroses in the north? Lady Metcalfe tried to guess. A very good family, I think. Dear Lord no, my dear. The northern Ambroses, the Earl's family, they may have recovered from their financial difficulties, but I assure you, they do not have the kind of money this Mr. Ambrose has. But if he has not inherited his wealth from them, where did it come from? The Duchess smiled. Lowering her voice, she said. That is the shocking part. I have heard, she continued lowering her voice even more until it was only a whisper, that he is involved in commerce. The two ladies gasped in shock. Surely not. Unbelievable. And trade, and he invests in manufacturing and industry. Can you imagine? Lady Metcalfe began to fan herself. Stop, please, my friend. or I am going to faint. That anybody should degrade himself so. You have not heard the worst of it, the Duchess said, ominously. My dear, what could be worse than that? I have heard, from a very reliable source, that during his youth he actually worked for money, that he did manual labor. Dear me. Heavens. Yes, the Duchess repeated with glee. He worked for a living. Among common working class folk. It is hardly creditable, is it not? Please, have mercy on us, stop. And not even here in the United Kingdom, but in some wild place in the former colonies. You don't mean, oh goodness, you don't mean that awful place. What do the people call it again? The United States of America. God, yes, please, Duchess, no more. Even the mere thought of that place makes me shudder. They do not even have a king over there, do they? Worse, my dear, they do not even take tea in the afternoon. I didn't catch much of the conversation after that. I had to admit, I was too blown away. Well, a gentleman who once did work for wages and earned his way to the top. What a novel idea. I couldn't suppress a grin. How very naughty of you, Mr. Ambrose, to so flout the traditions of the English upper class. But then my good mood vanished and I was overtaken by sudden anger. How dare he judge me and my attempt to earn a living when he himself had done the same? Yes, I was a girl and he was man, but apparently a gentleman. For a gentleman to work for a living was almost more outlandish than for a female to do it. And how, by the way, had he gotten so stinking rich at it? He couldn't have worked as a secretary, that much was for sure. I will find out the truth about you, Mr. Ambrose, I vowed to myself. And I will make you accept me. You are my ticket to freedom, whether you like it or not. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. The ball ended about 3 months later. Well, it felt like that to me, anyway, although it probably only was a few hours. We were conducted outside not only by servants number 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 11 and 25, but also by an enthusiastic Sir Philip Wilkins, who kept flashing meaningful smiles at Ella and waggling his over-large ears. Though I rather think he didn't do the latter intentionally. Outside, he personally called one of his carriages to convey us home, and not the same carriage either, but an even larger and more luxurious version. Our sitting arrangement on the way home was rather different from before. Now, a glowering Anne and Maria had taken their seats on one side, keeping everyone at bay with the bad mood radiating off them, while the rest of us were comfortably placed opposite them. Unlike on the way over, our aunt didn't give the twins a second glance. She was too busy contemplating Ella's matrimonial prospects. 3 times he danced with you, Ella, just think. 3 times, not to speak of the compliments he made you, she purred. I could almost see the twinkle of gold in her eyes as she contemplated the wealth of her future nephew-in-law. Ella nodded, slightly puzzled. He was indeed most attentive. It is no wonder that so many fine ladies were at his ball, considering how well he behaves to all his guests. My aunt laughed. It sounded a little like a choking vulture. Oh, my dear, I doubt he would have paid so much attention to any of the other ladies. But, aunt, what special interest could he have in me? This made my aunt laugh again, then wink at her niece. She was about as talented at winking as she was at laughing. Of course, my dear. You are very wise to be discreet. By this Ella seemed only more puzzled. Anne and Maria were staring daggers at her, choosing rather to believe her insincere than to believe anyone could actually be so innocent. I could hardly believe it myself, but unfortunately I knew it to be true. This was Ella we were talking about. I resolved to give my little sister a lecture about men once we were safely upstairs in our room. When we got home, though, it looked like it would take some time before we could get to bed. First my aunt had to rush up to my uncle and tell him everything that had happened at the ball. Then she had to rush down and tell us how delighted he had been about everything that had happened at the ball, most of which she had to make up because my uncle probably didn't utter more than 2 words in response to her jubilation. And then, then the flowers arrived. We had just managed to calm my aunt down to a certain extent, when the doorbell rang. We were also curious to know who could be calling at this late hour that we all gathered at the entrance to the hallway to catch a peek of the front door as Leadfield shuffled down the hall. It took him a while to maneuver himself into a position in which he could open the door without losing his balance and falling over, but finally he managed. The door opened, and outside a young man in livery stood, carrying something colorful and enormous. For Miss Ella Linton, he said, thrusting the big thing at Leadfield, who swayed under the weight. Thank you, he said, managing a half bow. I shall deliver it directly. Leadfield had hardly closed the door when we all rushed out into the hallway. My aunt was leading the charge. Well, Ella, she demanded of my little sister, who was holding herself in the background. See if there is a card. See who it is from. Hurry, hurry. Cautiously, Ella stepped forward and took the enormous bouquet, for that's what it was, from the swaying Leadfield. I supposed if one liked flowers and things, it was quite impressive. Some yellow flowers, dozens of white ones, and at the very top one of those red thorny things which were supposed to be so romantic. What were they called again? Ah yes, roses. Right beside the rose, a card peeked out of the bouquet. While just managing to hold the massive flower arrangement with one hand, Ella took the card with the other, opened it, and read, for the most wonderful dance ever. Sir Philip. Ah, my aunt clapped her hands, her eyes glowing with triumph and the promise of untold riches. I knew it. I knew they had to be from him. Such beautiful flowers. And on the same evening, Ella, only imagine. I rather expected him to send a little something tomorrow, but on the same evening. That is promising indeed. Promising for what, aunt? Ella asked. But my aunt only winked again and hurried off, muttering to herself, St. Paul's Cathedral. Yes, nothing less will do. It must and will happen at St. Paul's Cathedral. And all my old friends will be there. Oh, I can see Mrs. Gulliver's face now, green with envy she'll be. Anne approached her little sister with a smile that could have scared off a tiger. Congratulations, my sister, they are truly beautiful flowers. Thank you, said Ella earnestly, blushing. I truly believe, said Anne, that the bouquet might be even larger than the one I have got. What? Didn't you know? If possible, Anne's smile got even nastier. Sir Philip sent me a bouquet very much like that 3 days ago, and one to Maria the day before that. He seems to be fond of giving away flowers. Oh, said Ella, I'm sorry yours wasn't as large. Do you want mine? I wouldn't mind. I had to steady myself against the wall, otherwise I would have collapsed from fits of silent laughter. Anne's acid sour face was a picture. Don't be too confident, little sister, she hissed, gathered up her skirts and rushed away with Maria right behind her. Ella looked after them, a puzzled expression on her face, then turned to me. What was that about? She asked. I waved the question away, while trying to conceal my smile with the other hand. I'll explain it to you someday, when you're ready. Thank you very much. We might have said more to each other, but at that moment my aunt rushed into the room again. Oh Ella, Ella my dearest, isn't it wonderful? Such beautiful flowers. Show me again, will you? We have to find a vase for them, so when he comes to visit he will see. She was still rotating like an overexcited top, her voice too loud to even think of going to bed in peace. So I took a book out of my uncle's library and strolled into the garden. I hadn't indulged in my favorite hobby as much as I would have liked, lately. Too much had been going on, but at least now I had a few hours before I had to go to bed. What do you think I picked? Some wonderfully romantic novel that dealt with falling in love with tall, dark and handsome strangers. No, thank you, one tall and dark stranger in my life was quite enough. If those books gave help on how to organize a file system, that would have been one thing. But one glance years ago had been enough to tell me that all they were concerned with was strolling around gardens and mooning after men. I preferred another kind of bedtime story, an atlas of the world from my father's old book collection. Just my kind of book, no chauvinist heroes, no soppy heroines, and plenty of strange, foreign lands promising adventure. If only I could really go there, just like Anne Thornton, who had dressed up as a man to sneak aboard a ship bound for distant lands. I had never felt so envious in my entire life as when her story had gone through the papers a few years ago. I could hardly imagine how exciting a trip to inner Africa or the unexplored, icy regions of Canada might be. Much more exciting than dreary old London, I was sure. Slowly, I wandered through the garden and settled in the grass behind a clump of bushes, where I often sat when I wanted to avoid my aunt. The light of the moon was just enough to see by, so I opened the atlas and started leafing through it. I had just managed to lose myself in China, somewhere between Peking and Qingdao, when my thoughts were pulled from their Asian idyll back to Ella. I tried concentrating on my book, but just couldn't. Poor, innocent Ella. After what I had seen at the ball, it was clear as the day that Sir Philip had his eyes on her. She was just hopelessly clueless. I sighed and turned the page. Well, I would just have to talk to her and explain a few things about what went on between men and women. Was my aunt in bed and out of the way yet? I was just about to move on from Qingdao to Hong Kong when a voice from the garden disturbed me. PSHT. Or rather, not the voice disturbed me, but the fact that it was a man's voice. Definitely not Leadfield the butler, and my uncle. He wouldn't be seen dead in the garden. Who in God's name? PSHT. I'm here, my love. My love. Now things were getting a bit thick. I sat up straight and peered through the foliage but couldn't see anybody. And in the next moment I stopped looking, because what I heard made me forget all about the man. I'm here, my love, came the answer to the lover's call in the sweet, innocent tones of my little sister Ella. I dropped the atlas on my foot. Unsuitable suitors. Ouch. What was that, my love? Did you hurt yourself? No, my dearest Ella. Why do you ask? I could have sworn I heard somebody crying out. It must have been my heart crying out in joy at the sight of you, my dearest, my loveliest Ella. His heart, my foot, more like. Behind the bushes I was hopping on one foot, my hand clamped over my mouth to prevent any further outcries. I nearly toppled over but was able to grasp a tree and steady myself. Not more than a few feet away, hidden by the brush, I could hear the soft swoosh of a gown gliding through the wet grass and my little sister's light feet as she hurried through the garden. Oh Ella. Oh Edmund. Edmund, Edmund. Peering between two bushes, I could see my sister standing at the wrought iron fence that separated our garden from that of the neighbors, clutching at the intricate ironwork as though it were prison bars separating her from all she desired in the world. And indeed, beyond the fence stood Edmund Conway, our neighbor's son, staring at my little sister with an expression on his face that I could only describe as besotted. EWW. Oh Ella, he said again. Oh Edmund. Oh my love. Oh my dearest. They had said that already, hadn't they? Why repeat it? What was the matter with them? Squinting through the brush, I tried to get a better look at them. Were they ill? Maybe. Well, they definitely both looked slightly crazy. They had silly smiles plastered on their faces and kept staring at each other like there wasn't a beautiful garden with trees and birds and a lot of other interesting things all around them. In Edmund's case I might have understood that my little sister was an eye-catcher. But there really was no excuse for Ella's blatant staring. Our neighbor's son was a perfectly ordinary male specimen. Brown hair, brown eyes, 2 legs, 2 feet, and 1 head on his shoulders. There was nothing about him to justify such staring. He didn't even have an interesting hunchback or a boil on his nose. You are growing into a real lady, Ella, Edmund said, his voice thick with emotion. I watched you from the house when you departed in your fine coach. He watched her, the villain. Oh, it was nothing, she said, blushing, and not even because she was offended, no. Was this believable? She was actually pleased. It was not our coach you saw. It was that of Sir Philip Wilkins. He invited my whole family out to his ball tonight. A ball, Edmund sighed with the pathos of a Shakespearean actor. How I wish I could have gone to the ball and danced with you. How I wish I could just hold you in my arms once. But always this infernal barrier of iron keeps us separated. My eyes strayed from the pair of them to the ladder that leaned, not 10 feet away, against the wall of the Conway's garden shed. I was almost tempted to say something but wisely kept my mouth shut. Not only this iron wall separates us, my love, as you very well know, said Ella. There was something glinting in her eyes. Tears, tears. That rogue had managed to make my little sister cry. I was strongly tempted to go over there and clobber him over the head with my parasol but stayed where I was. My left foot was still damaged from the Atlantean collision, and I wasn't at all sure I could make it over there without landing on my nose. What else can separate two loving hearts? Edmund demanded. Ella, I love you. I wish nothing but to love you until my dying day. I heard a strange sound from a sister. Hiccups. No, it sounded more like a gasp of pain. But why the heck would she be in pain? I didn't see any blood or other signs of injury. Oh Edmund, do not speak thus to me, I beg you. Why not? Do you not love me? He actually looked wounded. No, more than that. Devastated. Slight doubts were beginning to gnaw at me. Either he was a darn fine actor, for which I didn't really think him smart enough, or he really. No, that couldn't be. Of course. Ella clutched the iron poles of the fence even tighter, and her knuckles turned white. Of course I love you, Edmund. With all my heart. Then why conceal our love in the shadows, my dearest? Just think, it could have been me who danced with you at that ball. Edmund, please, do not tempt me with these enticing visions. But why not? The desperate fervor of his voice was beginning to get to me. What if he wasn't just an obnoxious, lecherous rake like 99% of his fellow men? What if he actually loved my little sister? I shuddered at the possibility. And even worse, what if she really loved him back? Why, my dearest Ella, should I not openly proclaim my love for you? My family is not rich, but we're well off enough, and I am, while still young, a respectable man. Why should I not gain your love?